I decided I was going to go to confession. And
Are you allowed?
well, I found out. I went into the thing, and I didn't know what to do.
Sure.
And the priest says, "You're not Catholic, are you?" I said, "No." He says, "Well, I can hear your confession, but I can't absolve you." But what I wanted, I wanted to be absolved.
That's the part I need. Hi, everybody. My name is Evan.
And I'm Scott.
We're both Baptist pastors, and this is our podcast about the Bible. But wait, don't leave just yet. We won't be trying to save your souls. We won't be telling you how to believe or... Nope. There was no way I was going to get it twice in one day. We won't be telling you how to believe or what to behave.
We got the same shirts on, so they don't...
Yeah, they're going to know it. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see if anybody notices. I think it'll be okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Evan.
And I'm Scott.
We're both Baptist pastors, and this is our podcast about the Bible. But don't worry, we won't be telling you what to believe or how to... Third time's the charm. Hi, everybody. My name is Evan.
And I'm Scott.
We're both Baptist pastors, and this is our podcast about the Bible. But don't worry, we're not trying to save your souls. We won't be telling you what to believe or how to behave, and we promise never to invite you to church. We just like to talk about the Bible, what it actually says, where it probably came from, and how it's been understood, or not, by different people in different times and places. This is your warning, though, especially if you are or have been a person of faith. For our purposes, the Bible is not a sacred text. During this podcast, we'll be treating the Bible more or less like any other book. While you're here, there's nothing you have to believe. There are no beliefs you can't question, and there are no questions you can't ask. Welcome to the unHoly Bible Study Podcast.
So... we're continuing our little series on names.
Yeah, we're back.
Yeah. Last time we did Abram and Abraham. Today we're looking at Peter, who gets a name change. In the Gospel of Matthew, one thing as far as big picture, it's important to keep in mind that we have 4 Gospels.
Right. So this is a New Testament book. Right. Our first time talking about Matthew, right?
Yeah. Have we done a gospel?
We've done Luke.
That's right. We did.
Luke.
Yeah.
And we did John early on, but
right,
didn't talk about Jesus very much.
But it's important to remember that the 4 gospels are very different. If you read them side by, John is like its own thing.
Right.
Matthew and Luke have some similarities. Mark is the shortest. Looks like Matthew and Luke took a lot of Mark, preserved it. What we're looking at today is unique to the Gospel of Matthew.
Yeah.
At least the name change part of it is. And so we have this episode with Jesus telling Peter he's going to give him a new name.
Do you have... I know, so there are all these debates about the Gospels and how they were written and how they influenced each other. Do you have a clear preference among the theories that have been floated? How do you envision that process working? Are you convinced by one theory over another?
It's pretty clear, even from language, that Mark is the earliest. I mean, just my own reading and research, not even what other people say. It seems very early to me. And it also seems to me that Matthew and Luke had to almost have had an actual copy of Mark in their hands. In seminary, did you take a synoptic gospels class?
I did. No, my Greek exegesis class, like the class I took focused on a New Testament book, was the Gospel of John.
Okay, so we had a Greek synoptics class, and we had a synoptic gospel, and you had each gospel paralleled, and where they overlapped, you could visually see it.
Right. Synoptic literally means with the same eyes.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the three, Mark, Matthew, and Luke are the synoptic gospels because they see Jesus very similarly.
Right.
Yeah.
And what's interesting with Matthew and Luke is that they have the material from Mark, which in many cases is almost verbatim.
Yeah. Almost all of Mark is included in Matthew and Luke, right?
And then they have another source, which we don't know what the source is, that we called Q in seminary, which is it's for the word kel, right? Which just means source, right?
Yeah.
So it's the unknown source, but it's a source that they share. And a lot of that material is almost verbatim the same. And then Matthew and Luke have their own stuff.
Right. Yeah.
So we have three, for Matthew has three streams of material, Luke has. And in this case, we're looking at one that's fairly unique. At least part of it is unique.
Yeah. Some
Matthew.
of this stuff happens in the other Gospels. There's some stuff that's included almost exactly the same way in Mark, but then some of this is totally unique to
and so
Matthew's
the interesting question then, when you're as a pastor studying, preparing, whatever, when you look at a text like this, the questions that I ask are, okay, so it does add this little thing in here. Why? Why was that an important thing to add that Luke doesn't have or Mark doesn't have?
Yeah.
What's its purpose? What's its significance? There had to be a reason that this particular version of this story was told the way Matthew told it. Which is it's interesting that it's clear these different gospel writers did have different perspectives, different memories. They order things differently. There's not really a uniform story of Jesus. They're varied stories of Jesus.
Yeah.
And I think each gospel is trying to focus on different things.
Yeah. Do you remember, I didn't do as much background research for this episode on Matthew, so I don't remember who this book is associated with. Is there a traditional author?
It's sort of viewed as a very priestly kind of a tradition,
right?
Very kind of sympathetic to the temple or to the priestly traditions. Whereas Luke seems to be more oriented toward a Gentile audience.
I was thinking that's one of the things. That's kind of one of the shorthands people use, is that the idea that Mark was the earliest, kind of the roughest, the first draft of a gospel, but then Matthew and Luke kind of, their perspective shapes the way they tell that story in really prominent ways. And Luke is thought of as shaped by a more Gentile context, a less Jewish context, and that Matthew is very clearly rooted in the Jewish tradition and writing for Christians who are also Jewish or who came from Jewish backgrounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very much, it has much more of an institutional feel to it. And for me, Luke feels more gritty. We kind of see that
in this passage, I think.
Yeah, Luke feels more gritty, more earthy, more, it reads, one of the ways to help people see the difference, I compare the Sermon on the Mount and the Sermon on the Plain. You see, wow, they do have a different feel to them.
Yeah.
Very clearly different feel.
Most of the exact same words, just in a slightly different order. And then, like you said, with a few additions or a few subtractions, and really illuminating.
You have a version of the Lord's Prayer in Luke that we don't use that one. Why not? Why isn't that our Lord's Prayer?
Yeah.
Well,
and Luke has a version of the Lord's Supper that's never used in liturgy because he does the order. Jesus does the cup first in Luke and the bread second, and nobody does it that way.
And that kind of stuff drives fundamentalists crazy. And growing up in a very fundamentalist context, the things that at least I remember my pastor doing to try to sort this out, to explain all the apparent contradictions that aren't really contradictions or differences. But no, let's just say, they have different perspectives, different memories. They have a different collection of stories. How can you write anything and not have your own perspective?
Yeah. And that wasn't just your pastor either.
No, that's a movement.
And an old one, too. Like, Christians have been trying to harmonize these stories almost as long as there have been Christians, but certainly for the last 1,000 years, those differences have been really clear to people. And so you have sometimes literal, it's been a practice to create a harmonized version of these gospels that includes a little bit of everything.
I don't know if we used it in Sunday school or what, but there was a book I was introduced to at my church called The Harmony of the Gospels. And it fixed it.
Now, did it include John too?
Yeah.
Because sometimes
it did. Yeah.
They slide John into, which is much harder.
Oh, yeah. John, you really can't harmonize John with
John
the others.
has a very different calendar. Like, these things happen. You kind of have to.
But that was almost as sacred as the Bible, that harmony of the Gospels.
Well, I bet it was helpful to somebody who was trying to figure out how all these things could be true.
Isn't it interesting that even is a concern? That why do we feel we need to? Why is there a need to harmonize?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think it's
religious
related.
Impulse does it satisfy?
Yeah, that's a good way to ask the question too. Man, what would I say? Do you have an answer? What do you think is behind that?
Well, I think maybe it's just uncertainty in a big sense makes human beings nervous.
Yeah.
And if your presupposition about the Bible is that it's the inerrant word of God, it's this exalted document that's so divine that it's unique.
Right.
Well, then if there are differences, maybe they threaten the sacredness, divinity of this text.
My instinct is that this is a side effect of some deeper, I would probably say, misunderstanding or a certain way of thinking about faith or religious practice that requires perfect certainty or perfect clarity, which I don't think is something you can ever get from books.
Well, it really started that view of the Bible really got going in the early 20th century with the modernist fundamentalist controversies and the introduction of a critical approach to interpreting the Bible.
Yeah.
And there was this fundamentalist reaction to a critical approach.
Right.
But
people have been trying to do this even before that. Like, that tipped off a new phase in the conflict. But I think this had troubled Christians for hundreds of years before that, at least. The idea
who did it trouble?
Well, I'm thinking specifically.
It didn't trouble the masses, I bet. I'm thinking, I bet my grandmother, when my grandmother was reading the Bible, I just don't think she was like, wow, Luke told this way different. That's
I was specifically thinking about when I was in seminary. I remember doing a project on John Calvin's preaching, and this was something like he was very mindful of in his Old Testament preaching, which is I was thinking of all these sermons on 1 Samuel, where there are contradictions. The same stories are told twice in the Old Testament.
In Kings.
In, Kings and Chronicles. And Calvin, like, goes to some lengths. Like, it's not the end of the world, but he raises this question of, is this a contradiction? No, like, we can explain it this way, or maybe we can't explain this one, but I'm sure there's a good reason. The story is told like this here and somewhere else, another way someplace else, and it's not because God's wrong or the Bible's not reliable. So I do think there's always been this sense that we need the Bible to be reliable, whatever that means, or however we frame it. And there are good reasons to think parts of the Bible are not especially reliable, at least not as a historical record of what definitely actually happened.
It's such a narrow idea of what literature is in general, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would say that's kind of the misunderstanding at the bottom of that impulse is these stories weren't supposed to be a literal recounting or a literal recreation of exactly what happened, because the first storytellers knew that that's not a thing that's possible. Like, as soon as you're telling a story, you're creating something new. As soon as you're remembering something that happened, two people saw the same thing and remember it differently. You saw something 15 years ago and you don't actually remember how it happened. So,
and that's been proven.
Yeah, the historical moment is gone. Like, you can't.
Eyewitness testimony is incredibly unreliable testimony.
Yeah. And that's just reality. Like, I'm sure something happened between Jesus and
so
Peter.
Maybe what that says is these stories aren't preserving a historical record for us, but maybe these stories are communicating something much deeper. That there is a which I'll bring up a name that was influential for me, Bultmann, Rudolf Bultmann, and he had he was known for this idea of demythologizing.
Right. Very influential, completely brilliant, early 21st century or 20th century scholar.
And what his mission was, in a sense, was, okay, there is a deep message or story, or there's something beyond the actual words themselves, and these stories speak to it. It's what he called the kerygma. The true message is carried in these stories. But if you just read the story for the story's sake, you're missing out. There's a deeper structure to get to. And that's the way I look at this. If there's a difference, the question I ask is, well, what's Matthew trying to say that Luke wasn't trying to say?
I think that's the most helpful question you can ask about a story like this. My only issue with Bultmann's project, and I mean, it's not just him, it's a lot of scholars, it's still a lot of scholars today, is the idea that you could strip away the layers of mythology and all the magical thinking and the places where the memories had gotten unclear, or where the later church tradition was being laid back over the original stories. Like, there's some confidence that you could get back to the historical core or understand the message that Jesus brought.
Well, I don't think Bultmann ever articulated a true historical core. He proposed that it was there.
Yeah.
There's this kerygma.
Yeah.
But there was still, I never got a sense that he knew what the kerygma really was in its fullest sense.
Yeah, I think that's
it's the gospel for him, but
it's inaccessible. Like, you can't.
It's so mythologized, but then you demythologize it. What do you have?
Yeah. And I think a lot of scholars since Bultmann would say a lot of his choices were pretty arbitrary. Like, it was about his preferences and what made sense to him. But that doesn't always make sense to other people.
But he was influential in that he helped me. In a sense, it gave me a freedom to like ask these deeper questions, to not.
Oh yeah, he's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I one of my favorite writers to read, one of the most creative biblical scholars to ever live.
Yeah, it opens you up. There's so much more subtlety to these stories, especially when you compare them, and it does. There's fascinating questions like, really, what was important about this name change for Matthew?
Yeah. So we have here, we've been introduced to Simon Peter already, and it's a little bit confusing in all the Gospels, but maybe especially this one, since the name change is narrated. He's been Peter the whole time. Like, I think he's introduced as Simon Peter. Jesus refers to him, or I'm not sure that's right, actually. The narrator, at least, refers to Peter as Peter through this whole story. I'm not sure.
He was Simon as a fisherman,
right?
Very initially, right? Simon and his brother.
So Peter always has two names in, I think, all the Gospels.
He's called Cephas.
At least two names, right? Simon, Peter. Cephas is the Aramaic name, correct?
But it shows up in there too.
Yep. That's how Paul refers to him, right?
It doesn't Mark use Cephas once?
I think that's right.
I can't recall. Yeah. But I'm thinking it shows up in Mark.
Why does Peter need so many names? I don't know. Seems like overkill.
Think of how many passports he needed.
Right. And there's some question about whether it's not really clear in this story that we've read today. Is Jesus giving Peter a new name? Is this already a nickname that Jesus had given Peter? Is this just another name that Peter had always used? But it does, in this story, the name takes on additional significance and becomes important, at least in this moment, as a metaphor for for who Peter is or who Peter will be in the movement that Jesus started.
One thing, Peter would have spoken Aramaic, probably have it in his primary language. And if he did use that name, it would have been Cephas, because that's the Aramaic. Peter's the Greek.
Right.
So, I mean, there's a lot going on. And then, it's interesting how you would sort that out kind of historically, a timeline.
Right. Yeah. It's a fascinating passage. Any other background we need to talk about? Any other big picture stuff about the book of Matthew?
I think the
preoccupations.
Big picture question we're going to probably get to, or we will get to, is there's a lot. This text figures big in church history with Catholics and Protestants, and this figured big in my childhood. This was an important religious identity passage.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Like, this is a story I remember hearing. Like, this is one of those stories I don't remember the first time I heard it, because I feel like I've always known this story, or at least some parts of it or some versions of it, because it has, I mean, it's incredibly dense. We've kind of looked at the whole chapter today, but we're focusing really on just a few verses from the middle, and they are so incredibly dense. Like, long books have been written about them, pages and pages in any commentary.
And they're still being written
just to these few verses and how they've been understood and what questions they raise and what answers they offer. And I would say there's more questions than answers. We're going to talk about it after we take a quick break.
This wasn't a recurring dream, but it's one I'll never, ever forget. But it's a dream about Bob Dylan and Mick Jagger.
Okay.
And I find out that they are in our basement playing music and talking and stuff. And
Just hanging out.
I go down there, but they're only about this tall. And they're on stools. They each have a stool, and they're standing on their little stools, like a head bobblehead, but they're the real thing. That they're these little, and I'm like, and then I'm like having such a hard time with them being so small that I can't appreciate that it's Bob Dylan and Mick Jagger.
That's funny. And you're normal size?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Oh, that's very strange. Yeah.
I wrote that one down detailed in my journal. That one was like, I got to remember this one. Where do we go from here?
Are we back?
Yep.
All right. We start with take it or leave it. What about this passage for you? You want this one or not?
You know what? I don't.
Okay. Why not?
The reason I don't want it is because it has so much baggage associated with it throughout history. Yeah. It's been used and abused and misused to proof text all kinds of things that I think have nothing to do with what the story's about, really.
Yeah.
And for that reason, I'm like, we don't need that.
Yeah, I could see that.
If it's going to cause that kind of problem.
That makes sense. It does have a lot of baggage. Mm-hmm. It's a take it for me.
Really?
I think so. One of my things is is there a bunch of like really problematic stuff in here or troubling ideas? And I don't see a lot here that's troubling. Like a lot of it's really neutral. And I think the interaction with Peter and some of the earlier stuff that we won't have as much time to talk about today, I think it's an incredibly rich text, which is why it's been, why it has so much baggage, because there's so much you can do and so much that's not clear.
If I could eliminate a phrase, then I would keep it. And
would it be the phrase about
upon this rock I will build my church? That phrase, if that wasn't there, I would keep it.
Yeah,
but
and even that, I think, you can't cut. Mm-hmm. That would be crazy. We could only cut a chapter at a time. Mm-hmm. But no, it's the richness for me. It's the fact that traditional language is there, even though that's caused some problems. I'm not judging you for leaving it, but this one I think is just fun.
It's interesting though how our own experience with a text affects how we view it.
I don't have the. I have heard the arguments about this chapter. I'm familiar with the contours of the debate, but it's never been personal for me. Nobody's ever tried to push it.
Yeah, one way. When I reread it, for this podcast, I'm like, I remember this passage.
Yeah, no, I did not have that sense at all. For this one. It's, this story with Jesus and Peter is so central, and so much has been made of, and let's maybe go there first.
Yeah.
This story revolves around Peter's confession that Jesus is the Messiah. So this is a question that Jesus asks in other gospel accounts. Mm-hmm. He's got his followers, his disciples, his friends close by, these are Jesus' students, essentially. And he asks, who are people saying that I am? Or who do people think I am? And in at least in this account, they have very specific answers. Like people think you're a reincarnated prophet, or they think, I think they list several different
Elijah
prophets. Yeah, we can actually read it. I've got it in front of us. Some people say he's John the Baptist. Mm-hmm. So there's this idea that he's the recently reincarnated John the Baptist. It almost doesn't even make sense. Mm-hmm. Some say Elijah, others Jeremiah, or one of the other prophets. So these are the rumors that are circulating about Jesus. And Jesus says, but who do you say that I am?
Before you go on, isn't it just interesting that people would be even entertaining that. Well, maybe he's Jeremiah reincarnated.
Yeah.
Or maybe he's Elijah.
It is totally fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, would we think that way today? Would it be within our...
That's not where my mind would go first.
Yeah. But just that's a common way of solving, who is this guy? Well, maybe he is a resurrected John the Baptist or...
And we've talked a little bit about this before, and it's hard to know exactly what it was like to be alive in first century Judea, but you do get the sense that it was a time of expectation. And so I think we know that the reincarnation of some of these prophets was foretold, or that people expected it. There was a strand in Judaism that expected a prophet like Moses to come back.
Elijah was a big one.
Biblical tradition. The idea that Elijah is even immediately kind of reincarnated in his student. Like Elisha is not Elijah, but he carries on the
mantle.
Tradition. And he might as well be Elijah, just continuing on. So this idea that Elijah, I mean, that's still an idea, right? That Elijah comes back as the first sign of the end times, or the day of judgment. And there seems to have been this sense in first century Judaism that look out for prophets coming back. It's a sign that God's about to do something new.
Yeah. So that Jesus asked, and it seems bizarre. Well, there's all kinds of theories about who you are.
Yeah. And not just, they say you're Jesus. Like, we all know who you are.
It would also be interesting to know if for each of these, if there was if it would have a different significance for the people, like the people who thought he was John the Baptist, would they have a different idea of what that meant than the people who think he's Jeremiah? Right. Different expectations associated with each.
And I think it's just really hard to know. Like, this is one of those things that we can make guesses about, but a lot of this is just lost to time and history and inaccessible to us.
It does highlight, though, how weird some of this stuff is when you really think about it.
Yeah, those are very weird things to say. If people said things like that now, we would dismiss them as a little bit strange.
Yeah, I asked my church once, who do they think I was? And it was just one answer. I didn't have them fooled.
Yeah. It's kind of a scary question to ask as a pastor.
Sometimes. Oh, we think you're Scott.
Yeah. That's the best possible answer you can get. Yeah. But Peter has an answer ready. And he's the figure here who confesses that Jesus is the Messiah. And I can't remember. Nick, have we talked about the word Messiah at all or often? I'm not really sure we have. Yeah. Do you know the history of this word? How well do you know the history of this word?
Well, I don't know what you mean in terms of like etymology or...
Yeah. And how it functioned in
it's associated,
the Jewish tradition.
It's a very generic term that just means anoint. It's associated with like anointing a king ceremony, but it was to anoint for, I mean, it was used in non-religious traditions, situations as well. Just a generic anointing for a purpose.
Yeah.
Used for applying medicine.
Oh, really?
Was another use of it, like anointment.
Yeah, any oil you dump on something.
Yeah, it was the ancient version of Brill cream. You put oil on your hair to style it, and that was a kind of anointing as well.
Yeah. So we do have kings referred to as God's anointed in the Old Testament. That would be the same root word, even
Mashiach.
if not being used exactly the same way. You have the idea that a Messiah might be someone especially appointed and commissioned by God to do some certain task, usually to save the people from something. I can't remember who all the word is actually used for in the Old Testament. I know that the Persian king Cyrus is one of them, right? Cyrus is one of God's messiahs. Yeah, who has a role in bringing the people back from exile.
Yeah, and I would have to do some research into Jewish understandings, but I don't know that. I mean, I know in the time of Jesus, there were just multiple messiahs running around.
People claiming to be.
Yeah, I mean, it was not it was just.
Yeah, we kind of heard that a couple weeks ago in when we were talking about Acts 5, when Gamaliel talks about, we've seen this before. Like so and so was a messiah, and so, and they were all just
they're just running around. Yeah,
that's what I mean. This time seems to have been just totally bursting with expectation, and people, I guess, exploiting it, or maybe getting caught up in it and thinking, oh, God's anointed me. I'm the Messiah. I must be. I feel very important.
I think the best modern day example is the obsession with when does Jesus return, and all the, no, it's going to be, it's going to be this date, or, even trying to calculate dates and all the debate and numerology and, like, why are people obsessed?
Yeah.
With something you can't know.
Yeah, that's a good kind of a parallel.
But can you imagine coming to church and everybody's like, who do you think the Messiah is?
Right.
Well, I think it's Deacon Joe over here.
Yeah. There's this, by this time, so by the time of Jesus, there does seem to have been a settled, not settled, but there does seem to have been some generally accepted idea or expectation that God would or God might send a Messiah. And I think that's the tradition behind what Peter says here. Like, at least some people are expecting a Messiah to come who would rescue the people of Israel from oppression, right? Like, this is about political redemption and salvation. This is about overthrowing the Roman Empire, or the kind of imperial system that had, for centuries, had the people of Israel under its thumb.
And Israel's been occupied for 400 years at this point.
Right.
300 to 400 years.
And that's after the exile. Like, you've got almost 1,000 years of political domination and military domination of one kind.
So you can imagine there's a fervent hope for just being an independent nation again.
Yeah, to restore the old kingdoms, to be free or independent or autonomous, whatever that means. And Peter is the one who attaches that expectation explicitly to Jesus. And I think it's the first time, this is the first time that has been said out loud in the Gospel of Matthew, or at least it's the first time when Jesus accepts the title and says...
It's important to note, too, that Christ is the Greek word for Messiah. We'll keep that in mind, too. Christos.
Yeah, so when people say Jesus Christ... It's
the same
Jesus
thing.
Messiah, anointed.
Yeah, the Septuagint translates the Greek, the old Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible. The Septuagint uses Christ for Messiah.
Yeah,
Christos.
There's this great line right after Jesus says that, or right after Peter says that, you're the Messiah. Jesus blesses him. Which is a very Jesus thing to do. But then there's this great line. He says, flesh and blood did not reveal this to you. So Peter, the only way Peter could have known that Jesus was the Messiah is if God's Spirit had revealed it directly to him.
He didn't figure it out.
Yeah, it's not something that you could deduce just from looking at Jesus or listening to him or watching the things that he did. Only God's Spirit could show you this truth. But now that he's seen
Which is interesting, because because this is fairly, I mean, this is right smack in the middle of the gospel.
Uh-huh.
And they didn't think that about Jesus up until this point, as far as Matthew's concerned.
Yeah, or maybe they're not totally confident in it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're hoping, but not really sure. Mm-hmm. Or Jesus is resisting that title.
I mean, the way it's told, it's like this is a brand new idea. Peter, you have a brand new idea that didn't come from you.
Yeah. But it's also like, why were you following him if you didn't think there was something special about him? But maybe that is the point, is that they started to follow him just because he was a rabbi with good ideas and a way to live that was attractive to them. But now they've come to see...
And a rabbi who appealed to common folk.
Yeah.
I mean, in their common... it was...
Yeah, an interpreter of the faith that made sense to them.
Right.
Whose vision of the religious life was meaningful when a lot of visions weren't. Yeah. But now... if that's why they followed Jesus to begin with, now Peter seems to be saying, or has come to realize, that no, there's something of cosmic significance happening here. This is not just a guy with some good ideas. This is God at work in the world, about to change everything, or change things for us.
Yeah, this is the manifestation of a divine promise that goes way back. That's a big deal for those folks.
Yeah. This line is really important to Karl Barth, just because it's the idea that if you know and believe in and trust Jesus, it's not because you can't get there scientifically, or by adding up all the facts and figures. Like, it has to be the work of God.
Revelation. God revealed.
It comes like a bolt.
God does it all. We don't do anything.
Yeah.
Which I appreciate his passion for that, because he might overdo it, but I think it's a great corrective, because I think
well, he was resisting kind of liberal natural theology, which has said you can trust your instincts and just use your common sense. And the common sense most people, many theologians were using at that time, was racist and violent and nationalistic. And
there were some biblical scholars in World War II Germany who defended Hitler. So.
Yeah, and that's what Barth is reacting against, and finds one
the
of his most
majority of
important...
Christian pastors in Germany. Disturbing.
Yeah, but this becomes one of his most important proof texts for the idea that you can't read this, the will of God, off the world. It has to be revealed to you by God. And Jesus changes Peter's name. So he's, as far as we can tell, Peter is born Simon, which is a Jewish name, a familiar name for a Hebrew name, a familiar name among the Jewish people.
Built on the Hebrew word Shema,
right?
Which is the verb here.
Yeah. One of the most, the first line of one of the most, or the first word in one of the most famous lines of Scripture.
Deuteronomy 6.
Yeah, a line that almost every Jewish person would have memorized.
It's their confession of faith. Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one.
Yeah. So that's probably the name Peter is given as a child, as an infant. But he is also referred to, I think we already said it, as Cephas, which is an Aramaic name.
For rock.
And also the word rock. And then he's also known as Peter. Often he's called Simon Peter. And Peter is the Greek word for stone, essentially. So
I had a high school classmate whose name was Rocky.
Yeah. It's a nickname that people use. But it's not totally clear whether that's a how Peter got these names, we just do not know. So there's one theory that this is the origin of those names, and that this is the moment Peter has had this incredible insight. He's made this Christian, we might say a Christian confession that Jesus is the Messiah. And Peter says, Simon, you got it just right. From now on, I'm going to call you Peter, because you are the rock on which I'm going to build my church. And there's a couple really striking things about that sentence, and some that rub you the wrong way, right?
Right. So I grew up in a real anti-Catholic environment. I mean, I was taught Catholics aren't Christians. And I think the way the logic goes is that in my fundamentalist context, they thought this passage was used by the Catholic Church as the proof text that Peter was the first pope. Right. But then they go back and read this and say, no, he's not saying that Peter is the pope or that Peter is the rock, but rather it's Peter's confession that is the rock, or that's what Christ is going to build his church on, a confession of faith, not a person.
Yeah. This is a great example of like hermeneutical gymnastics that some Christians will do when something in the Bible doesn't line up with their theological assumptions, because it's not that reading might be possible, but you really have to do some backflips to get there.
Is there another reading? Is there another text that has, and upon this confession of faith? Is there a source that
I don't know? Not that I know of.
That would be important, because this is not. In my memory of the King James, it feels like it's got something in it that isn't here.
So I didn't consult like a critical manuscript that would show all the other readings that are attested.
Well, you just
commentary I did check addresses this question and reaches the firm conclusion that there's no textual evidence to support the idea that Jesus is talking about anything but Peter. So it's possible to read this, that Jesus is saying, when he says, and upon this rock, he's not referring to Peter. That's grammatically possible, but incredibly unlikely, and doesn't seem to be how any of the early interpreters understood it. Is that the question you were asking?
Yeah. So, boy, I wonder if I got fed a line. Well, yeah, there's no textual evidence for what I remember.
Yeah. The plain reading, I think, is that Jesus is saying, in Matthew, Jesus says, Peter, you've just made this amazing confession. We're going to call you the rock because you will be the foundation for the church.
This just shows how your religious experience shapes you, because if you asked me to quote this without looking at it, I would say,
and
here's
upon
how
this
I would
confession,
read it. I tell you you're a Peter, and upon your confession of faith, I will build my church. That's what I remember.
That's what your pastor would have told you. Like, that's how they would have understood this. Yeah.
So that's what I thought the Bible. I learned something today.
Yeah, great.
I got corrected today.
I'm glad we did it.
So maybe I'll keep it after all. The one I didn't want to keep isn't even real.
It's still complicated, though, because there's still a few things here that are strange or ambiguous. One is the fact that Jesus says church, which is not is a word that's almost never used in the Gospels. This is one of very few times when Jesus actually talks about a church. And one of the reasons most scholars probably think that Jesus never said this is because most scholars don't think Jesus envisioned a church. That the church happened after Jesus was gone, and that it wasn't something Jesus taught about. It wasn't like Jesus had a blueprint or a strategic plan that Jesus gave the disciples and then they were supposed to implement.
Well, and ecclesia means gathering,
A
right?
gathering,
And Jesus would have talked, if he would have talked about anything, it would have been in the synagogue, not the synagogue would be a rough approximation of what ecclesia meant.
So one translation for that word is the idea of a remnant of those who are gathered together. And this is a traditional Jewish idea that after all of the disasters of Israel's history, God might not save everyone, but God preserves a remnant who carry on the legacy of the community and keep the covenant alive into the next generation. And that it's possible Jesus would have talked that way, that Jesus would have had some sense. There is some evidence that Jesus knew that that his life was tenuous and that the kind of teaching he did often led to violence.
Here's another important point. We're even with Matthew, we're still separated from Jesus' actual teaching by a language because Jesus would have taught in Aramaic.
Right.
So Jesus would have never used the word ecclesia.
Right.
So we don't know what word he would have used in that kind of teaching.
And literally, this does just mean a gathering of people. It just happens to be the word that Christians would begin to use
formally,
to describe their gatherings and their congregations. So some scholars would say it's possible that Jesus really did talk this way and really did appoint Peter as a key leader, perhaps the key leader or foundation for whatever community followed.
He certainly functioned that way in the early church.
So there's debate about this, right? Like that
he was a prominent figure for sure.
Certainly a prominent figure, but there's debate about whether Peter was the foundation in any sense or the leader of the earliest church or whether he was just one prominent figure among many others.
He seemed to be influenced a lot by the apostles in Jerusalem. They seem to
He's really prominent in the book of Acts.
Yeah, but he seems to be struggling with subservience to he's like, I don't want to upset the Jerusalem apostles. So it's like he certainly cares about their opinion of him.
Yeah. He doesn't seem to be functioning as like a king, like a final authority, but maybe just the most influential among a group of leaders who were shaping the community's practice. He is, as far as the tradition is concerned, nobody else has as many. There are more stories about Peter. More of Peter's words are preserved. That's true in the Gospels and in the book of Acts. And even Paul's letters suggest that Peter, Cephas, was one of the most influential and prominent figures in the early church.
And Paul and Peter have they duke it out.
We've talked about that one.
Yeah. So he's a big deal. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But I want to make it clear from what I was taught, he was not the Pope.
Well, right. So the Catholic interpretation, so for Catholic Christians, it's very obvious that not only was Peter the leader or the most influential leader among the early Christians, but that Jesus explicitly gave him that role. and a lot of really important ideas in Catholic theology, like the papal authority, the authority of the Bishop of Rome, flow from this story and from the tradition around it. That the church has to have a head, a chief bishop on earth, and that Jesus gave that authority to Peter, and then Peter passed it on to his successor, and that in some form or another, that line of authority has continued to be passed down for 2,000 years. There's the ancient tradition is that Peter eventually makes his way to Rome and becomes the first bishop. By that point, the church apparently had more of an institutional structure, had officially defined roles, and that Peter was the bishop of the church in Rome.
And here's a question or something to consider: if Matthew was very oriented toward kind of a more religious perspective, would it make sense that he would even think about Peter that way? I mean, and it's also written so much later that those kinds of things would figure in.
Yeah, I mean,
but you said there's a debate about how early this tradition is.
So some scholars, I can't remember what we've already talked about or what we haven't. There's a debate about whether Mark's version of this story or Matthew's version is earlier. Almost everybody agrees that the Gospel of Mark was written before Matthew. Not everybody agrees, but most people agree that Mark was written before Matthew. There are some scholars who think that this version of the story is probably older than the version in Matthew, than the version in Mark. So rather than Matthew adding something that Mark didn't have, the argument would be that Mark took out something that Matthew preserved, which is the idea that Jesus specifically, explicitly gave Peter a special role and special authority in the early church. And there is some reason to think, like I said, there's some reason to think whether it came from Jesus or not, there certainly is a reason to think that Peter was the most influential.
Well, you look at the end of the Gospel of John, Jesus restores Peter, right? It's kind of like one of the last stories.
Yeah. And that is not a book that's especially sympathetic to Peter.
Right. So, yeah, he is important.
Yeah. In the Gospel of John, it's a church role too. It's feed my sheep. So this idea that Peter is going to be the pastor, the shepherd to the followers of Jesus to come. Last week we talked about the Abraham's name change, and in a lot of ways, I think these stories are explicitly paralleled. I think in Genesis 17, you had this idea that Abraham's name was changed as his role shifted and as his story entered a new chapter. He was now finally becoming the father of a new people and a new nation. And so he got a new name. And I think Matthew is explicitly kind of alluding to that tradition and to the idea of, when does God change your name? When does God give you a new name? When God's doing something new. And now Peter is kind of, in this moment, Jesus and Peter are looking ahead to what's to come, to the formation of a new people who are not identical to their Jewish ancestors, but represent some new thing that God's doing. And Peter is going to be maybe not the father of that new movement, but
the foundation of
but
it.
a foundation of it. Yeah. And I think that's Matthew, it's one of the ways you see Matthew standing within this tradition that he's inherited and also making something new out of it.
We know that he was an important source for the Gospels because it's commonly accepted that it's Peter's stories that Mark preserves.
Yeah, that's what a lot of scholars have argued, because Peter is so prominent in them. one way to think about it is, why is Peter so prominent? Because Peter told the stories. If somebody else had told the stories, we'd probably have they would seem more important than they do. The other argument is Peter is so prominent because he was prominent.
Prominent, yeah.
Because he was the most active, the most insightful, the most natural leader of the early church.
And some of the apostles we really don't hear anything about. Even
yeah, I mean, we know names.
Yeah, and nothing
no
else.
Stories.
Yeah,
like no details. Nothing.
Like how many stories about Nathaniel do you know?
Yeah, almost none. Yeah. And there were others that we know even less. Yeah, but Peter's a big one. There is an idea. Just a couple other things that I wanted to be sure we talk about. There's this line. It's so dense. Like there's every phrase in this sentence you could write a whole book about. But Peter or Jesus says, "I tell you, you are Peter. So you've got a new name. On this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it." So
go ahead and include 19 too.
Oh, and I'll give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven.
That's all what Jesus says is going to happen through Peter.
Right. That's the whole commission or description of Peter and his role. And a lot of stuff here that is almost unique in the New Testament. Like these are not ideas or language that is picked up by the Christian tradition.
And these are
really
cosmic level responsibilities.
They are. Yeah.
Like,
it's great.
You're going to be managing the kingdom, and you're going to be shutting down Hades. And
yeah. So the keys to the kingdom of heaven, it's not totally clear. Again, these ideas don't really become prominent in Christian theology, but they're so fascinating. Is the idea, do you read this? If Peter has the keys to the kingdom of heaven, does that mean he gets to let people in or keep people out?
There is that, that kind of language shows up in John. You can, whoever.
If you forgive, they'll be forgiven. Any sins you retain will be retained.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like you. I wouldn't
understand.
I wouldn't want another human being to have that authority over me, though.
Right. It's a lot of authority. The idea of binding and loosing is maybe a little bit more clear. Like I think this is a rabbinic idea, or at least has some parallels in other Jewish literature from around this time. But these are, if you're binding and loosing things, like this is about what you prioritize in your religious life or your practice, like what things do people have to do? What are you going to bind them to, and what are you going to loose them from? And I love this idea that Jesus is like, you decide. Like whatever you do, God will do the same thing. Like God will follow your lead.
It's interesting.
This is horrifying.
I think there's a longing to have someone in our life speak something that we need to hear in an authoritative way so that we can believe it. Yeah. Because we have a hard time believing it ourselves. I think there is part of us that wants some authority, boundaries, whatever. Yeah. I remember one time I was at a monastery for a week, and I decided I was going to go to confession. And
are you allowed?
Well, I found out. I went into the thing, and I didn't know what to do.
Sure.
And the priest says, "You're not Catholic, are you?" I said, "No." He says, "Well, I can hear your confession, but I can't absolve you." But what I wanted, wanted to be absolved.
That's the part I need.
But
it's not going to do me any good just to say this out loud.
It would have just been great if he could have said, "I absolve you,"
Yeah. What a dick.
Yeah. But but it's he blessed me. He couldn't absolve me, but he blessed me.
That's almost as good. Yeah. I'm just kidding. I know they have rules they have to follow. This is such a crappy thing to have to say to someone.
He felt. I think he felt sorry for me.
I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, that's what's so hard when you take this stuff too literally. That's where you end up, which is, I can hear your confession, but I can't absolve you because you're not part of. Because we have the keys to the kingdom of heaven.
And you're not one of us.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, it's the same thing we were talking about in the last episode, which is this idea of an exclusive community. Like, if you're setting any boundaries at all around the community, there's the risk that it's going to become exclusive about who's in and who's out and what steps do we have to take and what rituals do we have to practice and what things do we have to believe to be certain that God loves us. And if you can't check off these boxes, then you're outside. You're cut off from your people, or you're outside of the kingdom of heaven.
From my perspective, I don't know that it's totally clear what Jesus meant here. I think it's such a big idea that you can't.
The keys to the kingdom of heaven, what could that possibly mean?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a very practical job. It's like, okay, Peter, you do this. This is your job.
Yeah. But this is the reason. This image so many people have heard or seen. It's used in cartoons a lot. The idea that Peter is literally sitting like at a podium at the gates to heaven, like the pearly gates,
right?
And he's checking a list as people come in.
I've got about a dozen Peter pearly gate jokes.
And this is the root of that idea. It's totally fascinating. The gates of Hades, this is, again, not really an idea that is taken up really prominently in Christian theology, but it's such an evocative image. The idea that Peter's commission is to attack hell, because it's gates, right? The idea isn't that Peter's trying to escape from hell. The idea is that hell is somewhere, Hades is somewhere, it's locked up, and part of Peter's mission,
and they're not
part of the work of the church,
out.
is to get in there and let everybody out. And it's
so in that sense, this is a very big universalist kind of mission. You're going to liberate people from hell, and it's not about creating an exclusive community.
Yeah, Jesus is giving him a big job. And I do think that's, like, in the same sentence, you've got both those impulses. One, to lock up the kingdom of heaven so nobody else can come steal it.
I mean, to say whatever you loose on earth, that includes the earth. So
how often do we focus on, like, the binding? Like, what do we have to do? What do we have to lock up? What do we have to keep out? But there's a really positive, the idea that you can decide. God will follow your lead. Let the captives free, or whatever it is.
And what just popped into my mind when you were talking was, you're the salt of the earth, or the light on the hill, or you're going to change this world for the good. You're going to set people free, and you're going to bind them to something that's liberating, that gives them life.
There is so much in this. I mean, we have talked about so little of what's in this passage. There's the whole story before this exchange with the Pharisees. There's a whole story with the disciples where they miss the point and Jesus has to correct them. There's even predictions after this about what, Peter knows that Jesus is the Messiah, but they don't know what that means yet. And when Jesus starts to tell them more or teach them exactly what kind of Messiah he is, they resist it.
Like, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, Peter gets yelled at 10 seconds after he has been given the most important job in the kingdom of God. and he still hasn't figured
Well,
it out.
the language is strong. Peter rebuked Jesus.
Right. Yeah. And then Jesus rebukes Peter right back. Yeah.
When's the last time you rebuked God or Jesus?
I don't know. I don't think I've done it this week. Yeah. I've wanted to.
The line that stands out to me, we could do a whole episode just on this line. And he sternly ordered the disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Messiah.
Yeah, there's so much here.
Don't tell anybody. Yeah. I'm the Messiah. Don't tell anyone.
Yeah.
What's his mission then?
I'm
an undercover Messiah. Nobody's allowed to know I'm the Messiah. But
just keep it quiet. Keep it between us. Mm-hmm. It's very prominent theme in Mark's gospel, even more so than in Matthew.
I mean, that seems to undercut the mission, if you ask me.
It does. I mean, nobody's ever explained why they should keep this quiet, other than to say that's what Jesus wanted.
We had a class in seminary called The Messianic Secret.
Did you take it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I ever figured out.
There's no answer. Like there's
we looked at every Messianic secret passage. Yeah. Jesus says this a bunch. Don't tell anybody.
Yeah, and it's never really clear why. But it's also almost certain that Jesus said that. Mm-hmm. And then because why would they have all recorded it anyway?
Yeah, and then who is the first person to recognize Jesus as the Messiah? It's a centurion, right?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
In Luke,
in the end, he's in Luke at the crucifixion. Yeah. Okay. Surely, yeah. Well, he says, "Surely this is the Son of God." I think is what he says. But there's some, I will be revealed at that moment.
Yeah. I think one of the reasons that is so prominent and also so confusing is like. It doesn't make any sense that if Jesus is the Messiah, that there wouldn't be like a grand announcement. I think it's an attempt to make sense out of the fact that this was a relatively small movement and a relatively quiet movement. Mm-hmm. And if God is doing this in a small, quiet way, it must be for a reason. It must be intentional. And so it must... Even if we don't understand exactly why, that's why Jesus kind of wants to keep it under wraps, under secret, underground, whatever it is.
It's certainly not the typical religious approach to leadership.
Definitely not. Yeah. There's a lot here. Luckily, there's more versions of this story. So even if we don't come back to this chapter specifically, we'll get to tackle a lot of these sayings and stories again. Eventually, right?
Eventually.
Yeah. Anything else we want to be sure we talk about? I know we've been going for a while.
I'm satisfied.
I am too. And I'm grateful. So thank you to our producer, Nick Mandog Smith. Thank you to our executive producer, Jay Kennedy. Thank you to the congregation at First Baptist Church of Indianapolis, where I serve as one of the pastors. We would never have gotten this project off the ground, without their support and encouragement. Thank you especially to all of you for listening. Please do remember to rate, review, and subscribe. That helps us out a lot when you do it. If you have questions, you can send them to unholybiblestudypodcast@gmail.com. Or you can send suggestions there if there's a topic or a chapter from the Bible that you'd like to hear us talk about soon. Scott, any final thoughts?
Not one for me.
Next week, what are we talking about? Did we decide?
I don't know. Were we going to do Paul and Saul?
Are we going to do... Oh, no, we're going to do the Romans 16.
Right.
And then we'll do Paul and Saul
do
after
that again then?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
what are we going to do next week?
Next week, we are talking about the 16th chapter of Romans. So a lot of names, just a long list of names.
Should we do that?
You want to do that again?
I just realized my window is.
Yeah, okay, go.
Yeah. Can we keep recording?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm still rolling.
Yeah.
You want to do the whole...
Yeah, I was just going to do the whole wrap up again.
Okay.
Here's where we'll start. Anything else you want to talk about?
I think that covers it.
Yeah, I think.
I mean, there's more to talk about, but yeah.
A good enough place to stop for today. Well, thank you so much for listening. We do want to say thank you to our producer, Nick Mandog Smith, and our executive producer, Jay Kennedy. We want to say thank you to the congregation at First Baptist Church. We would not have started this project without their support and encouragement. Thank you to all of you for listening. Please do remember to rate, review, and subscribe. It helps us so much when you do that. If you have questions, you can send them to unholybiblestudypodcast@gmail.com. And if you have suggestions or requests about a topic or a chapter from the Bible, you can send those there too. Scott, any final thoughts?
No final thoughts.
Next week, we will be back and talking about the 16th chapter of Paul's letter to the Romans, which has lots of names. Scott, anything people should expect?
It's just a bunch of names, pretty much.
That's the whole thing.
There's a couple of interesting names. One in particular that I'll just let that be a surprise to you. Figured big in my own childhood and growing up.
Perfect. Until then, we're probably going to keep talking about this, but you don't have to keep listening.